안녕하세요, 여러분. Welcome back to Korean Lessons with Frank. So last week we discussed the sentence structure of the Korean language. That's a very big and complex topic, and don't worry if you don't feel like you quite get it just yet. It's going to take a while for all of that information to sink in, and the next several lessons should be much easier for you to grasp. Before we get into that though, let's review last week's vocabulary. Starting now, I'm going to leave a few seconds after each word to give you a chance to see if you can remember the translation. Alright, so first we have 저. Yep, that means me. The next word is 밥. You're right, that's either cooked rice or food. The next word we have is 책. Correct, 책 means book. Next we have 오늘. Yep, 오늘 means today. And the last word is 지금. Yep, 지금 means right now, this moment. 지금. Hopefully you remembered all those words, but if not, don't worry too much about it. You're going to see these words a lot, and you will quickly pick up on what exactly they mean. It will come naturally to you eventually. This brings us to today's vocab. Now today's lesson is all about verbs, and as such, all of today's vocab words will also be verbs. You've already learned two verbs, 읽다 and 먹다, but let's add some more to that list. First, we'll look at the most important verb in the entire Korean language, and that is 하다. 하다 has a very similar meaning to to do. About half of all Korean verbs are 하다 verbs, meaning that the verb is something 하다. For example, driving is 운전하다. Cooking is 요리하다. And thinking is 생각하다. You've already learned a couple 하다 verbs. Both 안녕하세요 and 감사합니다 are 하다 verbs. Now don't worry about remembering all of those different 하다 verbs I mentioned just a little bit ago. The important part is that you remember what 하다 means, which is to do. Next we have what is probably the second most important verb in the entire Korean language, and that is 있다. Now I'm going to be frank with you. I don't think there is a way to properly translate what 있다 means to English. The closest word that I can come up with would be to exist. You could also think to have. This is a word that you're mostly just going to have to learn through context. Fortunately, this word is almost as common as 하다, and every time we encounter it in the future, I'll go into more detail about what exactly it means. So don't stress about knowing all of the different meanings of 있다 right now. For the time being, just think of it as meaning to exist. Those first two were a bit tedious, but the rest of these are going to be much simpler. So the next word that we have is 있다. We already went over this verb a little bit in the last lesson, but we'll go into more detail about it this time. Pretty much it just means to be. The next word that we have is 갔다, which means to go. And the next verb is 오다, which means to come or to arrive. The next one is a few more syllables, and that is 가르치다, which means to teach, which is hopefully what I'm doing right now. It's a little weird to pronounce the first time, so when you look at it, it is 가르치다. 가르치다. And the last verb that we'll cover in today's vocab list is 아프다. 아프다 means either to be sick or injured. Koreans pretty much consider to be hurt and to be sick to be kind of the same thing, so 아프다 applies to both situations. Now you've probably noticed a pattern with all of these different verbs, and that is that they all end with 다. That's because these verbs are currently in their dictionary form. So if you were to ever look these words up in a dictionary, this is the form that you will find them in. You will never use dictionary form in everyday speech unless you happen to be talking about the word itself. Instead, you have to conjugate these verbs into the appropriate form for the sentence. There are many different forms that a verb can take, and in today's lesson, we're going to go over the most common form that you will be using in everyday speech, and that is present tense 존댓말. 존댓말 means polite speech, and it is the kind of speech that you will use with strangers, coworkers, people that you're not super familiar with, and also with people who are older than you. But not severely older than you, because then you would use a more polite form than 존댓말. We'll go over that in a later lesson. Now, conjugation is a big and intimidating sounding word, but it's actually a lot easier to do than you would think. To begin conjugating into 존댓말, the first thing that you want to do is remove that ta from the end of the word. What this leaves you with is what we refer to as the verb stem. Now you look at that verb stem and you look at the very last syllable of that stem. Whatever the vowel is inside of that syllable, that determines how you conjugate the verb. If the vowel inside of that block is then you look at the syllable before it to determine how you conjugate the verb. If the vowel in that last block is either o or a, then you just add a, yo to the end of the verb. Now this is done a few different ways depending on what that verb stem ends with. So let's look at the different ways that this rule can be applied to verb stems ending with o or a. Also, 하다 is an exception to this rule, so we'll talk about it later. Now if that verb stem ends with a consonant, all you have to do is add ung, a, yo to the end of it. So 팠다 becomes 팠다요. 좋다 becomes 좋아요. You're going to notice that if hyut is at the end and then ung is the next consonant, that the hyut often becomes kind of silent or very lightly pronounced. And from this you can also conclude that 많다 becomes 많아요. Easy enough, right? Now if the last syllable in the verb stem ends with the vowel a, then all you have to do is add yo to the end of it. For instance, 갔다 becomes 가요. 만나다 becomes 만나요. 타다 becomes 타요. Next, if the verb stem ends with the vowel o, by adding ayo to the end of it, the o and a merge to form wa. So ota becomes wayo and hoda becomes 화요. Honestly, I don't know if there are any other verbs that fit into this category. I looked it up, I couldn't find any others. Finally, if the last block in the verb stem contained and you looked back to find either o or a in the consonant block before it, then what you do is you remove the and replace it with ayo. So 아프다 becomes 아파요. 오르다 becomes 오라요. And 다르다 becomes 달아요. So that's how verb stems that end with o or a work. Now let's look at everything else. For all other vowels contained in the last block of the verb stem, instead of adding ayo to the end of it, you add ayo. So let's look at some examples of this. So when you have verb stems ending with a consonant that have the vowels that are not o or a, it's pretty much the same thing as before. You just add ayo. So 있다 becomes 있어요. 싶다 becomes 싶어요. 읽다 becomes 읽어요. And 먹다 becomes 먹어요. It's just like before, except now it's ayo instead of ayo. Now we'll move on to verb stems that end with vowels. This gets a little more complicated than before just because there are a few more options available to you. First, if it ends with a, then just like before, all you do is add yo to the end of it. So 사다 becomes 사요, and 나서다 becomes 나서요. Next, if the verb stem ends with u, just like before when you combined o and a together, in this case you would combine u and a to form wa. So 배우다 becomes 배워요, and 바꾸다 becomes 바꿔요. With verb stems ending with u, you look at the syllable before, and if that syllable before has any vowel other than o or a, then you replace the with ayo. So furuda becomes furayo. Furuda becomes furayo. This rule also works for verbs where the verb stem is only one syllable long and it contains So suda becomes sayo and kuda becomes kayo. Next we'll look at verb stems which end with e. In these cases, the e combines with the when you put them together, and so they form ya. Ita is another exception to the rules, so we'll look at it in a minute. So mashita would become mashayo, and tinida becomes tinyayo. Alright, so that's where we're going to end the basic conjugation rules. There are more rules that we could go over, but I'm going to stop it here just to avoid overwhelming you with too much information. I'd like to keep everything simpler than last lesson. I felt like that one might have been too much at once. So I'm going to make this lesson a little bit simpler than last one. But before we go, let's look at those two exceptions that we mentioned earlier, hada and ita. First, let's look at ita because that one's really easy. All you do is turn ita into either ieyo or yeyo, depending on what was before it. If the syllable block before ita ended with a consonant, then you would follow it with ieyo, and if it ended with a vowel, then you would follow it with yeyo. So you could think papieyo, chekyeo, or choyeyo, and purenkuyeyo. Now we'll look at hada. Now hada is a little more complicated than ita. Historically, hada was conjugated by adding yayo to the end of it, so it would become hayayo. However, this hasn't been the case for a very long time, so if a Korean heard someone saying hayayo, it would be like you hearing someone say thine, prithee, thou, something like that. So in modern times, hayayo was used so much that people wanted to shorten it a little bit, and what they did was it eventually merged into becoming heyo. So whenever you say hada in Tondema, you will be saying heyo. Alright, so that's everything we will discuss in this lesson. Let's quickly summarize the concepts. So to find the verb stem of a verb, you take the dictionary form and remove the ta. If the last syllable of the verb stem contains either o or a, then you conjugate it by adding ayo. For almost all other examples, you would add ayo instead. When you have a verb stem which ends with the vowel u, you look at the syllable block before that to determine what to add. Ita becomes ieyo or yeyo, and hada becomes heyo. If you're ever feeling unsure of how to conjugate a verb, you can always go to the website verbix.com. I'll put a link in the description, and you can input the verb in dictionary form, and it will tell you all of the different ways that you can conjugate it. That's the website that I always go to whenever I'm unsure if I'm conjugating a verb correctly. All you have to do is enter the verb in dictionary form into the search bar, and it will calculate exactly what the conjugation should be and give you the results. Of course, to do that, you have to know how to type in Korean. I'll probably make a video about how to type in Korean in the future. It won't be part of this lesson series, but I'll probably put one together at some point just to help you out. Alright, so I hope you found this lesson to be helpful. If you enjoyed my lesson and thought that it was helping you to learn Korean, please leave a like to let me know you liked it. If you have any questions or comments about how I could improve my lessons in the future, please leave a comment down below. And if you enjoy my lessons and want to continue following me, please subscribe to my channel. And until next time, 안녕히 계세요.